Hey everyone, so as promised we have our Monday mentoring video. Real quick, this one is basically myself and my student in my office, and Joel asked the question pretty much, hey, if we know that the gospel is true, shouldn't we spend all our time just witnessing to people and put aside anything about gifts and passions and calling? And so you're about to enjoy that part of the video here. We talk about C.S. Lewis and a few other things. So tell us what you think, like, comment, what have you, and please share. All right, thanks so much.
So I struggled with the idea of, like, now that I know, like, the reality of Christ and the reality of the gospel, I have a challenge with now, like, looking at my passions or desires in life and, like, maybe things that I would love to be doing.
Yeah.
But in a way, like, I think of it like, oh, isn't it selfish of me to even, like, pursue those things?
Yeah.
Even though maybe, yes, it can benefit the kingdom in the long run.
Right, because you're saying, like, if Jesus can come back at some point,
yeah,
and there's people dying all over the world.
Yeah, and like, in reality, like, wouldn't you actually impact the kingdom more if you were living every single day with, like, every contact you have with a person, you are telling them about Jesus in a genuine way? It's not like, oh, like, evangelist on the street going crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a genuine person who's actually just, like, interested in people, and they're gonna dedicate their lives just to that because they realize the weight of what the gospel is saying.
Yeah, in England, when I was doing my doctoral studies, like, I remember coming back to my place with my wife, and I went to this, like, weekly open forum where we had, like, atheists, Muslims, Christians, like, we all met every week on a weeknight on Wednesdays. And I was coming back, and I remember saying to her something very similar. I said, if it's true that there's a hell and some people are actually going there, why would anyone spend any time on TV, YouTube, or whatever, Netflix, right? Like, shouldn't we spend all our time evangelizing and witnessing? And I remember saying that to her. But here's what I said. I said, if we only have one life, and I didn't even finish the sentence, and then she goes, then we have to enjoy it. And I was like, no, that's not what I was thinking. I was like, then we have to, like, evangelize the world, you know? So I totally get that sentiment, and I think I realized there's kind of a little bit of both, right? Because I think every time we speak the gospel, it's received or not, depending on how fertile the soil of their heart is, and that fertility of the soil of the heart depends on what kind of culture we created in the long haul. Let me just try to illustrate a little bit too with C.S. Lewis. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Okay, great writer, right? Everyone loves his stuff, and he spoke at a church once in London. And a lady came up to him afterwards. She was like, I got a question for you. You're a professor at Oxford. You're a Christian professor at Oxford. Why didn't you write a Christian children's book series? And he said, with all due respect, ma'am, I did. I wrote a book so that when they were hear it when they're 5 years old, they would kind of get the idea of some sort of a visual gospel, right? There's good, evil, there's someone who comes in, redeems, and so forth. But when they're 25 years old and they hear the verbal gospel, then they would feel familiar to them.
Oh, that's true.
And so for 20 years, his thing is, let me cultivate an environment in which the verbal gospel can be placed and well received, versus, like, let me just constantly preach the gospel, because what if no one even knows what we're talking about, because there's no environmental structure for that to even make sense. So that's just one tiny thing. That's just Lewis being a writer. But what if everyone everywhere was painting the visual gospel, so that when the verbal gospel was proclaimed, people were like, I've seen that somewhere, or that feels right to me. I get that.
I think there's two roles in life.